Hi guys and gals, Jackie at the Famish Farm, and today we're looking at our meal plan and what new recipes we have to make for this week and what we've used up in our pantry challenge. I can happily tell you that we've used a couple packets of our frozen orange juice. I did try the chia seed pudding that's all over the place. It is not my favorite thing, but I was able to use some strawberry jam and some chia seeds. So that was a pretty good one. Today's recipes, we're going to try some malt flour and bread. My original plan was to get some bagels made with that because that's common in bagels, but I don't need bagels right now, and I do need bread for dinner tonight. And then the TVP were used last week, and then we had the leftovers of it this week. And then next week's recipe, the Meatless Monday recipe, is going to be another TVP recipe. That's the texturized vegetable protein. So we are making progress. Oh, the other thing is today we're going to do some bone broth. So we're clearing out bones out of the freezer. And I've got a recipe, new recipe I want to try that will use up the pork loin that we've got in the freezer. So it's all good. Anyway, let's get started on the bone broth. I almost forgot to tell you guys, the Italian sausage spice mix that we used to kind of doctor up the original recipe I tried was fantastic. So look for at allrecipes.com. It's recipe number 216319. It's homemade sweet Italian sausage, hot or mild. And it's written by Michelle Lee Gossman, and really good. We're going to use this primarily for pizzas, but easily I can see adding it, to lasagna or whatever you might use Italian sausage for. But again, I was looking for a faux Italian sausage, one made with ground beef. So definitely 2 thumbs up from Rod and I. So a little healthier version of sausage made with ground turkey. Give it a try. So bone broth is something I make all the time because it's something I drink for health. And just simply saving your chicken bones, perhaps adding pig's feet or chicken feet. I rarely have beef bones, more occasionally have pork bones. I just throw it all in together, even shrimp skins, it all works. And I do freeze mine in the 1 cup silicone cubes in the freezer, and then use it generally 1 cup at a time. And it's really great if you can your own tomato juice. A cup of bone broth, about 1/4 cup of tomato juice is really, it's delicious. So let's get started on this. So first up, whatever bones you've got frozen, and I reuse pig's feet 1 time, and so this is a reused pig's foot. And then that is not a pig's foot, that's a chicken paw. And my pig's feet I used for the 2nd time last time, so that is going in. And then I saved this in the freezer for the next time I need bones. I don't even wash it, I just keep it in the freezer. And let me wash quick. So you can salt or pepper now if you choose. I don't salt or pepper. I put about a carrot's worth of carrot sticks in because I don't have a full thing of bones this time, but stick however many you like in. And I'm currently out of celery, but I have this old celery flakes. This is old metal can, but I'm going to use these up just to get rid of them. And this I'm going to cover with water, put it on high, until it starts boiling or simmering good. And then I'll turn it down to low overnight, or whenever you remember to take it off the heat tomorrow to let it cool down. And I'll show you what we do with it after we cool it down. Okay, so we're back, and what we're making is a copycat homemade Schlotzsky's sourdough bread. Schlotzsky's is one of my favorite lunch places to go, and so I'm hoping this bread is close to what they offer. So we're starting out with just, warm water for our yeast, and we are gonna just put that, actually let's go ahead and put the sugar in. I think that's what it calls for. 1 tablespoon of sugar. The sugar feeds the yeast. And we'll just get all of that hydrated, and then we'll let this kind of bubble up. So it will start to foam like it is there. And then to our bowl, and I'm using my stand mixer bowl instead of my usual ceramic. I prefer the ceramic, but that's okay. We'll do this. Now, what we're gonna do is give this yeast about 5 minutes. We are going to go ahead and put in our warm milk. A little warmer than room temperature. That was 3/4 of a cup. 1 teaspoon. Oh, actually it says to wait for that. We'll do the baking soda and just 1/4. Then this is really weird because how many recipes use yeast and baking soda? And we're doing 1/4 teaspoon. So I'm just eyeballing that into the warm milk. And then 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And then it's just going to have us mix this, and 1 cup of flour. And I do have, I'm nearing the end of this particular bag, and I'm fluffing this up. And then we'll let's see if we can how the whole package comes out when you don't want it to. At least that didn't happen. And then we're just going to mix this until this is smooth. Okay, and now we're going to mix in vinegar. I wonder if it's trying to replicate a sourdough-ish type feel. 1 teaspoon white vinegar. And the remaining flour. Let's add this looks nice. We're going to go ahead and add in our yeast. Nice yeast. I'm going to switch over. Now we're going to add in another 1.5 cups of flour. Let me give this a nice fluff. There's one. We'll go back to our and another half. Okay, so this is looking like it's going to be almost like a quick bread dough. Interesting. It's going to be, we're not going to knead it. It's going to go right into our baking dish, and it will proof for a couple hours in the oven. So I'm going to get this flour incorporated good, and then I'm going to prepare the baking dishes. Now this calls for 2 9-inch cake pans. I do not have 9-inch cake pans. I do have a 9-inch, I do have a 9-inch pie pan. But you know what I think I'm going to do is, does this make sense? Instead of 2 9-inch, use the pie tin and then 2 loaf pans. Loaf pans, because I think you split them in 2 when they come out of the oven. So let's do that. And we're going to let this raise for 1.5 to 2 hours till double in size. And if it raises up double in there, that would be about right. So I may put some additional in a mini bread pan. And this wants you to prepare the bottom. And using a little bit of cornmeal. So let's see how that goes. We're going to call that good. And we will put in half of this. Half of that into each of those loaf pans. And again, sorry to the creator of this recipe. I'm taking liberties, as I usually do. And as I think most people that have been cooking their whole lives do. So that's our ball of dough. You can see very wet. And I'm just going to take roughly half of that in each pan. And it says just to flatten it as much as you can. And then I've got my oven on and the light on in my oven. I don't have proofing in my particular oven, but we'll make do. So here is our bread, and we will just try. I should have my hands wet to do that, but we'll see what happens here. Divide the dough between pans and spread it out a little. Well, as you can see, not perfect by any stretch. And here's our other one. I got a little on the side. And we'll do the same thing on part 2. And I am going to try to get this off. And I think I'll put it in this guy. Okay, so here are our 2 loaves of Schlotzsky's original bread. I did like the rye better, but we're just trying this recipe first. I'll try to add a little bit of rye flour next time if we like it. And I'm going to stick this in the oven. Okay, and our second bread recipe is an easy freezer pizza dough. That's from Scratch Pantry. And I ran out last week of pizza dough. I used the last one in my freezer. So this is a new to me recipe and looks very easy. No need, just simple to throw together. So it calls for 3.5 cups of flour. And I've just used my same bowl that we mixed the other recipe in. So there's my 3.5 cups of flour. But first we really should probably do the yeast and let that start. So 1.5 cups of warm water, 1 packet of yeast, and we're also going to add 2 tablespoons of oil. To this. I thought that was interesting. Never added the oil at this point, but that's okay. And then I'm going to use the same whisk when I locate it. Here we go. Same whisk as before. And again, we're just getting all of that yeast down in the warm water. And then we're going to let that hydrate for about roughly 5 minutes. Okay. So there we go. We'll come back to that in just a few minutes. And I think I'm going to move over to, well, let me go ahead and finish the rest of the dry ingredients. So we have salt, 1 teaspoon of salt, and this recipe calls for 1 tablespoon of sugar, and was surprised that didn't get added with the yeast. This is a teaspoon, so we'll need 3. And 3. And we're going to put this on our stand mixer and just let this combine before we add in the water and oil mixture. So I'll join you over there. This is my little Krupp's Swedish hand/stand mixer that I received as a wedding gift from my Swedish brother-in-law and sister-in-law a long time ago. And it's not super high powered, but it's done everything I've asked it to do, just maybe takes a few minutes longer. I've got the dry ingredients all combined, and now I'm adding our wet ingredients. And I'll help it along by getting those that flour into the wet mixture. And I think it took about 5, 6, 7 minutes for this to come together in a ball. Toward the end, there's about a 1/2 cup of flour left, and they have you add it a tablespoon at a time. And I added 5 tablespoons, I believe. I think I could have thrown it all in and it would have been just fine. And so now we've got that nice ball of dough formed. Yes, still a little sticky, but a nice dough. And now I'm just going to prepare little dough balls to go into the freezer. We like thin pizza, so I'm thinking this will do 2 for sure, possibly 3. So I'm going to go ahead and prepare 3 just to be safe. And I'll have to report back to you next week on how good this was. Into the freezer. Okay, and our next new bread recipe is the easy homemade French bread, also from Scratch Pantry. And we've got 2 cups warm water. We're going to add in a tablespoon of sugar and a tablespoon of yeast from our little packet of active dry yeast. That is a little shy, so we are going to open another pack. And this is all the bread this week because this is all of my yeast. Let's call that. Okay, and again, I'm just going to whisk this together. Sugar is going to be food for the yeast, so that can be activated and hydrated, and we'll let that sit until it gets foamy. And then we're going to do the same process, mix up our bread, our flour, 3 cups of the flour, and 2 teaspoons of salt over in the stand mixer. And then we'll slowly add in the yeast and water again. And we've got 2 more cups of flour that we can add slowly until the dough forms a smooth, not tacky dough in about 4 or 5 minutes. And my stand mixer is not as powerful, so it may be longer than 4 or 5 minutes, but we'll meet you over there and we'll get started. We have about 2 additional cups of flour to add, and so that's what I'm doing here as we slowly add that and give the mixer a little helping hand getting that flour incorporated. And then after the ball is formed, there's about a 1/4 cup of flour left in the bowl. I remembered the malted flour, so that's what I just added, and just 2 tablespoons. The recipes I've seen said you can replace the barley malted flour for up to 1/4 of the recipe. I went obviously much smaller. Don't know what impact it will have on the bread. We'll see. Good French bread is something I've been trying to make for a long time, and Rod has suffered through many loaves of good Italian-ish bread, but never a really good French bread. So that's why we're attempting this one today. Now, unfortunately, I make a decision to try some of my newfangled toys. The serrated, it's a vented bread pan 2-section. And then this is called a couche, that linen, piece of linen that I'm gonna flour and shape the doughs on. Okay, we're back. I've kind of gotten ready, everything ready in the kitchen for the next step. We're waiting on, got about 15, just under 15 minutes for our Schlotzsky's loaves doing their rise before we put them in the oven. Over here, we've got, I'm gonna hold this back a little, not quite to a nice simmer on the bone broth, so that's still on high. And then the loaf we just made that we're waiting to shape into French bread is rising beautifully. And that's it for now. What I learned on this couche, C-O-U-C-H-E. It's usually a piece of linen, which this is, and I got it on Amazon. And what I've done is flour it, and we are going to use this to shape the bread. And what this does is it will, instead of the dough flattening out, it will cause it to rise. That's the theory behind this thing. Something about absorbing the moisture and the shape of these holding things up side by side. I don't know. We're going to try it. We'll see what happens. Wish me luck. The next instruction now, turn the dough onto a well-floured surface, cut in half. I'm going to use my same bench scraper and we'll get this. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. We will cut it in half, roughly. Actually, just going to put the other half back in this bowl. And now we are going to roll the dough into a rectangle. We need plenty of flour. And let's just get a little on top of here. Rectangle about 15 by 8. So we are gonna try to make this so we do not stick. How about an oval? Okay, I think that, look at this, nice bubbles. Okay, and then it says, starting at a long end, roll the dough into a cylinder. And then we're gonna pinch the ends sealed. So pinching. Pinching, pinching, pinching. And we're just going to tuck this under. Pinching, pinching. And we're going to, oops, we should tuck it this way. Okay, and now that is humongous. That's more than 15, I think. It is, but c'est la vie. Okay, so let's get our seam side down on our couche. Now, I'm gonna flip over here so you can see I've got this fully in my nice floured surface. And then you create a pleat. And what I'm gonna do is, because we're not having, 10 loaves of bread, I put it up against my cutting board and we'll shape this other one. Okay, beautiful. Okay. Let's get you into a rectangle. I'm just going to make sure that it doesn't stick. And that is our timer for our next thing on our Schlotzskys. But let's go ahead and do this 15 by 8 rectangle. Again, that looks like an oval, doesn't it? Okay, start on the long end, and we're just forming this into a cylinder. Oh, the toe is beautiful. Okay, we're pinching See those air bubbles? Okay, we're gonna pinch this under on the end. More air bubbles. Thank you, yeast. Thank you for creating a beautiful rise. Okay, and again, we're gonna put this over on our couche, and I'm gonna put my rolling pin up against it. I guess that can, and we'll be back. Actually, we'll be back in. Cover with a damp towel and let rise for 30 minutes or an hour till it doubles. So here is our damp towel, warm from our oven. And I think we're gonna take this out and get our oven turned on. Hopefully we won't lose the rise. And let me check the temperature on our bread, our other bread. And I'm going to bring it back up here. So our Copycat Homemade Schlotzsky sourdough is, now it's risen. We're preheating to 375. We're going to bake for 20 minutes or until golden brown. So we'll let the oven come up to, it's about 112 now, up to 375, and then we'll come back to putting that in the oven. In the meantime, I'm going to get all of our flour stuff cleaned up because we're done making bread. Okay, this is really going to be a inspiration recipe. Was planning on doing it in the slow cooker, but the pork roast is already cooked. So basically everything that's in here does not need to be cooked except the onions and the mushrooms, and I'm doing that to release some liquid. So I'm just going to start with my mushrooms and onions, and I'm going to saute them in some olive oil. I'll add more olive oil if I need it in a bit, but for now, we'll see how that works out. And then I've got about 1 pound of this pork loin roast, and I think I'm just gonna dice it, chop it, and go from there. And again, with my trusty steak knife, this is just what I prefer to cut with. This is still slightly frozen too. A little bit better. And I'm just going to cook these mushrooms basically to reduce the water, release the water. And that's because I don't want them to affect my sauce. So this is just a little salt. Okay, we're ready to get the French bread into the oven, and look at my problem. We have too long and actually too long, so I might have to go diagonal. If I can even, oh, this one's already poofing off. So it said to use the couche to get it onto a bread peel, which I don't have. So we're going to gently try to encourage it onto this pan. Oh, I'm sorry, bread. Oh, it's already deflating. Okay. Massive fail. Okay, why don't we just do this? Oh no. That's the seam side. Fail, fail, fail. Let's prepare this. And this one, in the process, I flipped it out onto, oh, it's deflating too. We're gonna put these back under a towel and just see if we can convince them to keep rising or re-rise. Not good. Not a good look. They looked beautiful before that, didn't they? Okay, let's give them another 15 minutes and see if we can get another rise. And here we're ready. We've run a knife around the bread. This is the Schlotzskys. That came out nice. Very nice. Smells fabulous. And I'm just going to wait to slice these. You slice it in half and then your sandwich is built from there. That is our simmering away bone broth. And here is our pork loin casserole, whatever you want to call it. That is going to go in the fridge. I'm going to put the lid on it. It's going to go in the fridge, and we'll have this for dinner tomorrow night. While waiting to see if we can fix the bread that has spread out and not risen anymore, I put some chicken breast in the microwave for salads. I cooked those chocolate chip cookies that are just frozen, fundraiser cookies from the freezer. And finally, the bread comes out, and it's beautiful, a great hollow sound on the bottom. We're having it tonight for dinner. I'll let you know how it is. Here we are with that Schlotzsky's bread, and I briefly considered toasting this under the broiler for a few minutes. I decided not to. I decided only to go with mustard on one side, but I would suggest you do both sides. And this particular recipe also mentioned a creamy garlic. I don't remember that in the original sandwich, so I'm not using that. And then some sliced ham. And I'm kind of using what I had leftovers from some omelets. And honestly, these are pretty thick slices of ham. So that was plenty. And then I would go a little heavier than I did with this hard salami. I think I end up using 8 pieces. Pack about 10 on there, and then you'll have about the right flavor profile. You could go with more ham if you wanted. This is some Havarti cheese, and honestly, I would have done this a little different. I would put one of the sets of cheese underneath the meat, and then the other one on this other open face side. But that's Havarti. You could use cheddar or whatever you've got. This is what I had, and I've got to get it used up. And then on top of that, a little mozzarella and Parmesan. And the cheese aspect of this was very good. I didn't miss the cheddar, but I do look forward to it next time. And I think, as I said earlier, maybe not, I'm gonna make this in a rye bread fashion next time. I think you can add a little bit of rye flour and cocoa powder and get a dark rye like they use. And this is black olives. We're gonna put this underneath the broiler and let the cheese melt, the edges of the bread crisp up, so you do not need to toast it ahead of time. But this was really good. This ends up being, and remember this is loaf pan size. I cut it into 4 pieces, and I think I ate 1.5 pieces and Rod ate the rest, and we were both stuffed. It was very, very good. Oh yeah, and after it comes out of the broiler, you can top it with lettuce, tomato, onion. We just had lettuce tonight, and so I shredded up a little bit. It was perfect. You can see here the bread is about twice the thickness it needed to be. That's the only change I would make. This was a really good copycat recipe of this Schlotzsky's deli bread. The sandwich was great. We put that ham, hard salami, black olives, cheeses, mustard, perfection. So the pork roast recipe with mushrooms and brown sugar apricot pomegranate sauce. It's a mouthful, but it was very good. You'll find that at glutenfreegoddess.blogspot.com. It turned out delicious. I do wish, in hindsight, I had left the cinnamon at a 1/4 teaspoon. It's not bad, but I might have been a little happier with it, a 1/4 teaspoon instead of a half. The changes as far as my using strawberry jelly instead of apricot and cranberry juice instead of pomegranate, all of that was just fine. This was really very good. Now I ended up putting it in my slow cooker this morning because I had stuff to do during the day and I didn't want to have to think about it. Everything was delicious. I did have to thicken the sauce a little bit, but it would have been fine without doing that. So you do you. Now the bread, that whole fiasco. Guys, just stick to the recipe as written as far as dividing the dough, the way she has you work it into a cylinder and put it on a prepared baking sheet. That would have been perfect. You saw what kind of rise it had on it. It was beautiful. The bread is delicious. It looks horrible. I told Rod if it wasn't any good, I was going to make croutons, but I can see this being delicious in French toast. And anytime we want to do our olive oil dipping spices, it'll be great in that. Anytime we want bread. It's delicious. Make that. And that is scratchpantry.com easy homemade French bread. Okay, I'm giving this recipe full credit for my faux Italian sausage. Again, Michelle Lee Gassman, allrecipes.com, recipe number 216319, homemade sweet Italian sausage, mild or hot. Skip that other recipe, adding the apple, the egg, the breadcrumbs. You don't need it. Go straight to this one. She says in the recipe you can use the ground pork as written or use ground turkey, ground chuck. She does say don't use ground beef. So That's and use oil if you use ground turkey. But the spices in it are fabulous. I went on the milder end of the spices. If you like hot Italian sausage, go, I'm sure, the full. There may be some direction in the comments as to that, but I usually on spicy just go light. It was delicious. We're using it on pizza. You use it however you use Italian sausage. Don't forget the bone broth. So I take that half a pig's foot out and it is saved in the bone Ziploc bag for the next batch. I strain out the bones, and what I'm left with, the broth, I put in any bowl, and it goes into the refrigerator when it's cooled down. Once that comes out of the refrigerator, I use a big spoon and skim off the fat. It comes off really easy, and then I portion it into my 1 cup silicone little soup containers that go in the freezer. There you go, easy peasy. We'll let you know how that easy freezer pizza dough by Scratch Pantry turns out. Stay tuned for the next time we're in the kitchen. Thanks for watching.